kick off. The events in 2020 have presented challenges for each and every industry sector. We are now beginning to see some opportunities emerging as a direct result of this pandemic. Can you share what opportunities you are exploring and actioning within your own organizations and what you are seeing across your respective sector or sectors? This is a question for everyone, so Patricia, maybe you can start us off.
Sure. So what I am seeing in terms of taking advantage of this pandemic is a recognition that productivity isn't necessarily connected to presence in the office. And leadership is becoming more flexible in the way they're thinking about how work can get done. And it's really leading to a lot of creativity, a lot of creative solutions that probably would not have been considered before, but that people are willing to look at. One of the things we're doing at ASU in terms of keeping our staff and our students safe is we have a health check app, which didn't exist before as far as I know. And every day you check in that you don't have any of the symptoms. And it seems rather simple, but what it really requires is for people to actually take the minute to think, how do I feel today? And that is so far keeping our students and staff safe. So I think that was a very creative solution that had to come about very quickly, that the IT organization and the leadership came up with.
So flexibility and creativity are key.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Alan, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I build on what Patricia noted. Crises tend to accelerate underlying trends. And so I think all of us are seeing the reality that at least in services or professional type of jobs, many of these roles could be done remotely, whether it's in a home or another setting. But that's rapidly accelerating that. Aside from the initial response to the crisis, the obvious things in terms of employee support, what we're working on right now is what is the workplace of the future, hopefully 6 months, 9 months down the road. What does that really look like? And there's the brick and mortar element where we're not going to build the church for Easter, right? We're certainly going to reduce our footprint. But aside from those economics, what we're working on is what does that workplace look like as a collaboration center? It's not a place where people come and do a job in a cube or even a shared type of office space. But going way beyond that, what are the implications of a workforce that's largely distributed and rarely with one another face to face? What are the subtle things in terms of how people are developed? How do you onboard people? How do you align your culture? And so we're struggling with that, frankly, right now, because we do believe that there is a fair amount of socialization that occurs that, as good as this platform called Zoom is, we're going to have to find a way to replace. And it has profound implications, not just in terms of some basic HR processes, but how do we grow and develop our talent if many of them are sitting at home in their jammies working on Zoom?
Interesting. Maya, what are your views?
So I've had the fortune as, I've been in practice in consulting. I am talking to so many different companies, and what I have seen as a trend, honestly, to piggyback what Patricia said, there is such a focus on employee wellness and taking care of the well-being of employees. And so CHROs are revisiting what they currently have in place or reinvesting in wellness in a way that they, historically have not. I would say back in May, I was reading many, many articles from psychologists and psychiatrists that were talking about America in particular. We were in a mental health crisis, that BIPOC employees and specifically Black employees were literally experiencing what they were characterizing or diagnosing as post-traumatic stress disorder. And that significantly impacts their ability to work effectively and focus in the workplace. And so I think there has been much more of a shift on the mental health of employees in a way that I have never experienced in the many years that I have been in HR, which I think is fantastic, because it's something that we have not spent enough time on or invested enough in. And it is unfortunate that we had to have these very traumatic experiences happen across the country in order to prompt companies to focus on this.
Yeah. And do you think health, physical and mental well-being will be a mainstay of cultural evolution and sustainability going forward?
Absolutely, as well as employee engagement. When employees feel that you care about them, that you're investing in them, and that you care about their well-being, you're building engagement, you're building loyalty, it's an incredibly powerful and compelling retention strategy. And so companies are seeing that when they are rolling out things that focus so much on how are you feeling and how can I best support you so that you can be effective at work. It has been an incredible, compelling strategy for companies on how they connect with their employees, and the employees have this sense of loyalty to the company.
And perhaps, unfortunately, the pandemic has brought about something that maybe across the global landscape, certainly the US landscape, organizations were losing that sense of employee engagement and retention and loyalty.
Yes, definitely. And there's conflicting evidence and research on the working from home experiment, the global experiment that we've been going through, and whether it is really disengaging or more engaging. Depending on the company, and I would say the culture pre-pandemic has so much to do with how employees are behaving now that they are working from home. And what my experience has been from clients that I've spoken to, as well as my own personal experience, I actually am more engaged and work more at home because, I don't have the commute, and I don't have to, get dressed and do my hair, and all of that takes, 2 hours in itself. So when you are cutting out those things and people are working from home, they are giving more time and more focus to work is what I have been experiencing, and I'm seeing nodding. I think that's been everybody's experience.
Indeed. Skip, how about your thoughts?
Well, we built Yext largely on small and medium-sized business customers, and then later largely enterprise customers. And in the early days of mandatory work from home, our BDRs and our salespeople were calling into organizations that had never virtualized any of their processes for evaluating software purchases or anything like that. And what we realized fairly early was that we had a product that actually could add tremendous value to state and local governments for being sure that accurate information was being provided around the pandemic. And then also, so we repurposed a lot of our efforts around building out COVID websites for states of New Jersey, Alabama, et cetera, the WHO, the State Department. And so to pick up on the point about an acceleration of an underlying trend that Alan made, that was something we saw nascent signs of early on, but it was a way to rapidly build our own organizational capabilities in an area where we really had not developed that musculature. So in the spirit of never wasting a good crisis, we really have used this opportunity to make our products relevant, make our business relevant, make our customer engagement relevant for a sector of the economy, a large sector of the economy that we had never really worked closely with before.
So thinking about creativity, flexibility, how we navigate in the digital environment, optimizing products, I think Maya's notes on health and well-being, taking all of that into consideration, what does that mean for you as a HR leader, but also as a business leader?
Well, we see, frankly, if there's a benefit from having done this for a while, there's pattern recognition that comes from a pandemic. And one of the things we recognized very early was we formed a pandemic task force in February. We moved to mandatory work from home very early. We have the benefit of being a software company, so working from home is relatively easy for us. But we quickly realized that employee health and well-being was an absolute top priority, and we've maintained that as a top priority in all of our decision-making frameworks since. And then in terms of priorities thereafter, it was, of course, the sustainability of our platform, supporting our customers. And so we've been through tremendously intense iterations of what we thought the time horizon was going to be in terms of the time away from the office, and what it's turned out to be, of course, is much more, much longer than any of us anticipated. And I'm sure, like others on this panel, I not only oversee the people function, but I oversee the facilities, real estate, and office services function for the company. And we're now in the process, we're back open in a couple of countries, but we're now in the process of formatting all of our workspaces to be able to be compliant with all the local health regulations and be able to continue to protect our employees as our number one priority.
Excellent. Patricia, any thoughts on these considerations as the whole panel has now weighed in?
Sorry about that. I was thinking about
okay.
what Maya said in terms of how important the culture was before we went into this digital life, and how do we maintain that in a digital culture? What does a digital culture mean? Because we're probably not all going back, all going to be in the office at the same time, 8 to 5. And a lot of our sympathy and our love for our compatriots was because we'd sit around the lunchroom and have conversations about, somebody who's driving us crazy. And those are how you make those connections. And those don't happen quite as easily or as casually as on Zoom. And so how do you make those little subtle connections digitally via Zoom is something we're struggling with and trying to figure out, because we have a great culture and we want to maintain it.
Yeah, indeed. Alan, some thoughts there?
Get me off mute here, sorry.
That's all right.
Actually, I'm going to shift a bit to the anecdotal. And, all the panelists have mentioned the importance of mental health. And frankly, that's been our number one priority. But it's gone back to some really basic things, just connecting with people one-on-one in particular. That's what we really emphasize. We've done, literally in the first couple of months of COVID, our CEO, myself, others were doing global webcasts every week. That's all good, but really driving down to the supervisory level, people to connect one-on-one. And what I've noticed, maybe you've seen it as well, hopefully it's not emergent on this particular broadcast today, people are getting very impatient. There's a cumulative fatigue that has set in. It's not just COVID, it's obviously all the stresses that we see in our society. It is the difficulty at times of getting things done in a virtual world. And, I've seen, frankly, increasing uncivil behavior, or maybe not overtly, and I'd be interested to see if others are seeing that. But, in the early days, we were doing, let's do a Zoom cocktail party to have some social time. Now people are like, no, look, I'm too busy. I think, a couple of folks have mentioned, since I think Maya, you mentioned, since people are not preparing to commute anymore, I think they're working a lot longer. I know I'm on calls at 6:37 in the morning, practically every morning. Everybody knows where you're at. And so, we're kind of trying to struggle with how can we bring a little bit more civility to the workplace. And, I mentioned I'd just taken a vacation last week and actually went out. I actually led a lot of social media posting on that because people felt they couldn't take time off. They're like trapped in their home. There's no place for them to go, but there's no open space for them. So I'm kind of blabbering on, but this really soft stuff that HR people are really good at, I think we're going to have to continue to innovate with. And, our own view of this is going to persist for another 6, 9, 12 months. So we better come up with another wave of interventions to help support the mental health and balance of our workforce.
Yeah, good point, Ellen. And Maya, I think if we can come back to you, there is this, in our own organization, I know that, around our world, there is certainly a level of frustration. I think the word fatigue is a good one. And back to your theme on health and well-being, certainly that's a dialogue you're having, or you're listening to your clients about some of their concerns.
Yes, so absolutely. I think early on there was a focus, as Alan said, we as HR leaders are equipped to immediately tap into how do you take care of the people. So from very early on in the pandemic, I worked with clients on developing boundaries and helping people really work out work-life balance, because there was literally like this blending of work and home, because now you're working from home and the kids are in the background, and your whoever you're living with, your spouse, your roommate is in the next room on a meeting, and so everybody's trying to negotiate for quiet space. And then to Alan's point, you're working such long hours because everybody knows where you are, everybody's at home. So they are reaching out at hours that they normally would not have reached out. And so I literally had companies that like sent out rules of engagement about, what while we're at home, no emails after 6 p.m. and, don't reach out to people on the weekends. If you reach out on the weekends, don't expect a response. Some people, have to send things when they're thinking about it. And so, I definitely think that companies had to be intentional about drawing boundaries and helping people manage expectations as to how many hours are you supposed to be given to work. And then the other shift that I've seen is companies are now trying to get off of Zoom because people are suffering from Zoom fatigue. And so I had read an article about how the video call experience, our brain actually works differently to process information when you are interacting with someone on video. And so we're paying attention to how we look and how we sound and, all these things that you wouldn't normally be doing if you were face to face or over the phone. And basically the point of the article was that video calls are actually physically more exhausting. And so what we would end up seeing in a few months is people feeling a lot more exhausted at the end of their workday when they've been on Zooms all day. And so because that research and, those learnings have happened over the course of these months that we've been in the pandemic, a lot of companies have shifted to let's do phone calls, let's do, let's try to resolve this via email, let's do a conference call, because Zoom literally is fatiguing people.